There we go. Just hit OK. This meeting is being recorded. And to save ourselves a little bit of bandwidth, if you can turn off your video and your audio until you're ready to ask a question, that'd be great. Bob, take it away.
You can share. Did I share my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, good. Okay, so I'm going to talk about facilitating invent sessions and describe a little bit about what an invent session is. This is mostly for corporations rather than individuals, but okay. So a little background. So starting at the beginning, I was born in London, England. I grew up near Toronto, and I got all my college at University of Toronto. I went to a postdoc at Rutgers and a visiting professor at Northeastern. Those are some of the things I was interested in there. It's phase transitions, gauge field theory, quantum chaos, all very mathematical, theoretical physics stuff. And then at that point, my wife and I had 2 children. I had the offer of some other 2-year appointments, and I said, I got to get a job. So I joined Pitney Bowes, which is, if you don't know, Pitney Bowes is a company that makes a lot of mailing equipment for physical mail. And they've diversified a little bit from that now, but that's the core of the company. And I joined their R&D group. Ended up staying there for 30 years, and I don't think it was I started off thinking I'm a theoretical physicist, so I did a lot of other stuff there, but a good company R&D group has PhDs in a wide variety of subjects, so engineers and chemists and mathematicians. And so I was working with them on different problems. So I enjoyed the whole 30-year time, and it was a rewarding career. But some of the things I worked on are listed there. So, but one of the things that happened, because I got some patents, I got involved with the patent department a little bit, and as a patent agent. And then I retired from there after 30 years and joined Fairfield in 2015 as an adjunct, and then became a VAP. And now I'm back to being adjunct. It's sort of an oscillatory process. Okay.
Bob, could you tell us what VAP means?
Oh, visiting assistant professor. Sorry. Right. Yeah, visiting assistant professor. All right. So, well, I may as well blow one of my own horns. So I got 156 patents at Pitney Bowes, so U.S. patents. So an invention, sometimes you're like in the shower or driving and you get an idea and you say, wow, that's a great idea. I might be able to do that. That's not usually the way patents work. Usually what happens, it's a group of people with different issues, different capabilities, and somehow accidentally they align over coffee or in the bar in the evening. And you come up with a solution to some problem that maybe the person who had the solution didn't even know that was a problem. And sometimes even that solution is a patentable idea. Well, that isn't a good process for a business. Businesses want control. So they want a systematic process. And that's what invent sessions are about. So I'd like to just mention, I've three people who I worked with at Pitney Bowes. Jim Eichner, he's now runs Outside Insight Consulting, and Ron Sansone, he's passed away now, but he's a PV fellow, had a lot of patents and taught me a lot. And Christian Cruz, who's a futurist, and has this Waypoint Growth Strategies LLC. So those were some of the people I learned these things from. Okay, so a lot of times a business needs to pivot because AI comes in or some other technology revolution. They need to pivot their business plan. Established business practices often are a stumbling block. So a company, if they want to hold on to their existing business method, a new technology revolution, if they don't buy into it, can be a real problem for them. So an invent session is a few days, usually three days or sometimes more, not necessarily one after the other, but you try to get together a diverse group of stakeholders. And what I'm going to talk about is the stages of this process. So there's some pre-work. There's 3 days, 3 stages of the session, and then there's a lot of homework. 2 of the methods are that we used are open space methods, and a method by Marshall McLuhan. He's like the media guru, Marshall McLuhan. So I'll talk a little bit about his methods. So this quote here, we become what we behold, we shape our tools, and then our tools shape us. That is like a perfect Marshall McLuhan quote. And I was going to put it on as a Marshall McLuhan quote. And then I looked online, and some people claim it's a Marshall McLuhan quote, but it's not. It's Father John Culkin, Society of Jesus. Okay, so if you're going to have an invent session, if you're going to do invention, you may as well set the bar high. So, Bell Labs developed the laser, semiconductors, all kinds of semiconductors. They were leaders in solar power because they have this vastly distributed system, and they need power in places where it's not easy to just wire it in. Of course, they developed a lot of communications things, the transatlantic cables, microwaves, cellular communications, a lot of fiber optics. Claude Shannon developed information theory. Tukey developed FFT there. So it's signal processing kind of things. So, and then partly from trying to optimize their microwave communications, they discovered the cosmic microwave background radiation and got a Nobel Prize for that, proving the remnants of the Big Bang. They discovered the Van Allen belts, and then for all their algorithm development, they developed C and Unix, among other things. So anyway, so there's a story. I don't know how true this story is. I read it in a few places and I heard it. And it's hard to get exact details, but a VP at Bell Labs called a group of people, leaders and other people together, and said, so he called them to a meeting. He didn't show up to the meeting on time. And this guy was somebody who was never late. He shows up late. He's looking really upset. He says, the whole telephone system is free. You have to believe it. And if you don't believe it, you can leave now. So he said, so what are the main important features of the telephone system. And somebody said, so this was old times a little bit. So I said, well, the telephone dial is a key thing, and the switching system is a key thing. He says, yeah. Those were all invented before any of you guys were born. So he said, we've made great improvements on the components, but we made no fundamental improvements to the network. And we're going to be in trouble if we don't do that. So this was one of the first like organized invent sessions. The inventor, Edison, he created, his research lab and produced a lot of inventions, mostly himself. This is a different idea. This is get people together, the business side, and find things to do. So one small group of young engineers started talking when there were a lot of ideas. Somebody said, well, we could replace the dial with numbered buttons. And so suddenly this group started talking and with themselves during the meeting. I guess it was a little upsetting to people. Then they left and they came back at the end with a prototype for touch tone. And they said, so the reason people thought touch tone would be good is, well, I make less mistakes dialing. It's a little faster to dial. They said the real advantage is that it saves the online time when you take the phone off the hook and it takes time for that dial to go forward and backwards. That's costing us millions of dollars a year. And we're going to save those millions of dollars by this improvement. So you thought it was a user interface. It's just to make the network work faster. So a business runs an invention session. They want to generate IP. They want to protect their existing business model. They want to protect new offerings. They want to not be blocked from entering new businesses. And they want to develop a protected basis for innovative offerings. This is a stumbling block, but it's also a cairn, which is a stack of rocks. This is an ancient one, a stack of rocks that usually is used to represent a burial site. So I thought it was kind of appropriate because companies who try too hard to protect their existing business model often don't. Okay. So the business time frame is always like this quarter, and the inventor's time frame is 10 years, and you have to work out a compromise between those. For a lot of companies, they don't have an invention culture, and they may want to build an invention culture. So this is one way that you can start to do that. So this is an outline of an invention process, so an invention session process. So the goal is to go from the brainstorming part, no idea is a bad idea, to the get down to the details, no idea is a good enough idea. So no idea is a bad idea is a great way to generate a lot of ideas, but most of them don't hold water. And then, so you have to follow that up with, a critical analysis. So there's a lot of pre-work. There's usually a team that does this pre-work. They interview stakeholders, they determine the business needs, and so on. I'll talk about the pre-work in more detail in a second. The first day is called Stir the Pot. It's to kind of generate sort of a common basis for people, to start people thinking creatively. So there's some presentations, some technologies discussed, and presentations on business needs. You generate some wishes. You use this, maybe use this open space method. You form clusters of these wishes, and then you start working on it. Then day 2, you generate. This is the no idea is a bad idea day. So you're generating a lot of ideas. You form small working groups around those ideas. They present them, and you get actually, I wouldn't call it disclosures, but you start to describe the concepts in some detail. And then day 3 is evaluate. This is where the no idea is good enough. You say, like, how can we improve that? How can we make it work? Even how can we make it patentable? And you decide what areas we're going to do IP on, and then you have a lot of homework. So the participants, it's important to have a company executive like this, like the Bell Labs, the VP who started the meeting, called the meeting and started the meeting. It's a lot of work. And if you ask somebody to do a lot of work and you don't have the executive behind you, they're not going to do it, basically. You want the company legal people there, all the technical people, product owners. I mean, you don't need all the engineers, all the product owners. You need a representative group that you pick based on how well they fit the goal of the event session. It's good to have customer-facing employees, and it's a good thing if you have some new employees who look really promising. It's a good way to get them into the company and get them connected. And then external participants, sometimes we've had customers come in, lead users, subject matter experts, and then like the job I would be doing, like a facilitator, we've had an artist come in and draw, do drawings of the ideas as we're doing them. And you always need somebody that's a recorder to record things. Like if you have a really creative session and nobody wrote anything down, don't know what happened. And you need non-disclosure forms. Some people don't realize this, but if you're working on an invention and you have people who aren't under contract with you to be non-disclosure people, then you had any external participants, they have to be under non-disclosure individually. Each person there should be under a non-disclosure agreement. Okay, so the tools you're going to need for this, you're going to need the background. This is kind of a joke, but sometimes the stack of background material that people produce is pretty high. You don't want to do that. You want to produce enough background material that people can read it before the meeting. You need lots of food, coffee and tea. You need breaks because a lot of invention, invention doesn't happen usually when you're sitting watching a presentation. The invention happens when you break up, when you're in a break and having a casual, informal discussion. So you got to create those opportunities in the invent session. And then you need breakout spaces for when somebody's on an idea, like those guys who wanted to work on the touch tone. You need a space where they can go and do the work they want to do. You need a parking lot because not every idea that comes up, you're creating a lot of, you're making an environment where there's a lot of creativity around the business. And a lot of the ideas that come up won't be something you want to address during this invent session. You need a parking lot, preferably online, but it could be just a bulletin board where people post their ideas that they want to look into later. And then you need invention disclosure forms. And again, it just said, just repeat. non-disclosure forms. Okay. So the pre-work, there's usually a team. Like the facilitators will be on the team. Some key people from the company will be on the team. You have to identify and interview key stakeholders. Sometimes lead users from other fields, like a company that was doing an event session around making power line workers more efficient, brought in mountain climber, people who make equipment for mountain climbers, as like these are real experts in a field that's like not competing with us at all, but it's in a way it's related. They have similar problems. They got to carry a lot of tools and do a lot of climbing. So you got to focus the business needs and values. You got to think about new technologies. What things, like right now it would be AI probably. What's the AI going to do to this business? You got to prepare presentations for the first day, the stir the pot day. You got to invite the participants. And maybe this should have been the top of the list. You got to have buy-in from the C-suite. Okay, so that's the pre-work. The first day is stir the pot. So stir the pot. In the morning, usually we have presentations. These are limited. Like some people, you get them up there and they want to talk for 2 hours, and that's not what we want. So 15 minutes. What are the key points? And then after each presentation, you have some follow-up. So the presentations could be it's helpful to have a presentation about IP, what IP is and why it's important. Presentations from the business people about business needs, from customer-facing people about customer needs, and from some key technology people about technology. So after each one of those presentations, so you know the subject area because you learned that from the pre-read. You might have come up with some thoughts about what, as you're watching this presentation, you come up with some thoughts, you jot it down, and then during the presentation, you jot it down. After the presentation, you ask people if they want to share any of the wishes that they wrote down. And again, it's helpful to have the recorder document these conversations, who said what, because in the end, you're going to want inventors. And, if somebody came up with an idea that's going to be part of one of the inventions, you want to identify them. And then the afternoon is kind of stirring that stuff up. So you could use this McLuhan tetrad method I'm going to talk about. You could have an open space meeting. So you got everybody stirred up now. The next thing is go home and relax, take a shower, go for a walk, whatever it is you do when you come up with good ideas. Go home and do that. So that's day one. And then okay. So the open space, this is an idea of this guy, Harrison Owen. This is a picture of an open space meeting at NASA. It's kind of everybody's seated. It's a circle so that nobody's in control. Nobody's at the head of the table. There's a facilitator who preferably there might also be a separate recorder, or the facilitator's recording. They might be like a disinterested third party rather than one of the key business people. So a lot of times you'll say, well, this person from IT's not here, so we really can't do this. So he has these rules. whoever comes are the right people, whenever it starts at the right time, wherever it happens, it's the right place. Whatever happens is the only thing that could happen. Once it's done, move on. When it's over, it's over. So applying this method, you seat the participants in a circle. The facilitator sets the theme, and participants start generating topics. And so you'll write down a topic. You'll stand up and say, I have this idea for a touch tone phone. And they'll say, so this is a non-critical, this is a brainstorming process here. So you can make wishes that are completely outlandish. I wish the document could write itself, something that might sound outlandish, it might not be.
Bob, could I ask a question?
Yeah.
So when I think about sort of like the examples that you gave, where Arno Penzias discovers the black body radiation of the Big Bang, it's kind of an accident, right? I mean, he didn't set out to do it. There was no focus group. And when I think about
Right.
Shockley discovering the transistor, I don't think a focus group was involved. He just decided that this was going to be a, sort of a thing that he wanted to try and do. A lot of people who have these important inventions, like Barnes Straussup doing C++, they're just not in a focus group. They're working as sole inventors doing their own thing. And sometimes it's an accident, but a lot of times it's just one person with an idea. And maybe that's not the kind of invention that you're talking about here. Is that right?
Right. So I mentioned at the beginning that that's the way some inventions happen. You're working on something and you just come up with an invention. That's where a lot of mine came up. But sometimes, you don't get the creative spark or Bell Labs was a little bit of a special case, right? Because people could work on things. They could work on things that had no benefit directly to the company. Most businesses now don't work that way. If you're working on an invention, you're working on an invention for the company. So you need to know, what does the company need? So yeah, you're right. Those happen. That's not likely this kind of invention, although the touch-tone phone did come out this way, right? Those guys weren't thinking about a touch-tone phone until they heard the idea come out in the brainstorming part from people who were thinking about users and things like that. So yeah, it's a mixture.
I'd like to make a comment, and that is that what is invention most of the time, and maybe not always at Bell Labs, particularly in the early days, but most of the time, an invention is a combination of things that haven't been combined before. And the idea of having multiple people reflects the fact that each individual has his own collection of knowledge, input, ideas, and so forth. You combine them and you come up with something useful.
Right, that's exactly right. Thanks, Scott. Yeah. Okay, so you have this open space, kind of sitting in a circle, generating ideas for topics, and people would incorporate the wishes they had on during the presentations, and so then what happens is you have a break. It's an important part, and facilitators or some participants, somehow that this always used to fall to me. was to group all the ideas into a few topics, and then participants would choose a topic to lead, a topic area to lead. So you could post, what we usually would do is post them on a wall in groups. And then somebody, well, there might be a group of ideas that nobody wants to do, right? Even though it was maybe, some people came up with those ideas, but like, so you just like put those on the parking lot. Some ideas, there's a few people want to join on. One participant takes the lead for an area. They go to it actually works best if you go to a corner of a big room, right? So if you divide the corners and sides of the big room into a few spaces where they have flip charts, and helps if you have a recorder in each group, and those groups would work on kind of fleshing out the detail of these ideas that were generated in the whole circle. They dig in, they define the goals in more detail. They try to describe it from different stakeholder perspectives. And one of the rules of the open space meeting is the rule of 2 feet. So if you decide, okay, I don't like the way this is going, or I think I really want to participate in that other group, so I can just go over there and participate. That's why it works best in a single room. Because even though you're close to one group, you can kind of peripherally see the other groups. So the second day is to generate wishes. So the first thing is a review of the first day, and you might use the open space method again. You finalize the working groups, and then the working groups have to have their own spaces to go work. Here it helps if it's a separate room, but if not, like a corner of the room. Each group has their own space. They're going to build the concepts. They're going to argue about the details of what works and what doesn't work within their working group, and develop some initial content for invention disclosures. So after you've done that for long enough, you might then you'll regroup. You'll share the results. So each group will say, okay, we worked on these 2 areas, and here's the 2 things we came up with. Describe them in some detail. And then there's like a review of constructive criticism, building on the concepts, generating new concepts from those concepts. So a lot of times it happens that you hear some idea from one of these groups, and you have one of those single inventor things where, oh, you know what we could do? And generate maybe a completely new concept, or maybe build like a dependent claim on their concept. Here, a recorder is really important, because you have to know what are the creative contributions of each potential inventor, because you're an inventor on an invention if one of the claims has even a dependent claim has as an inventive concept in that claim, your idea, right? If you just worked hard on it, that doesn't make you an inventor, right? If you just know how to implement some part of it that's kind of obvious, like not really inventive, then you may not be an inventor on it. It becomes a sort of a delicate process there to really define the inventors. Um, okay, so at the end of that day, the owner of this invent process prioritizes the areas for detailed inventions, and there's homework given to some people to draft invention disclosures. Okay. So I want to talk about McLuhan a little bit. So this is Marshall McLuhan. He was active as a media guru. He was really an English professor. He was born in Alberta, Canada, but he was at University of Toronto. So this is the coach house. I just showed this because he had meetings there Thursday evenings, and he would invite people from magazines, ad networks, technologists, all kinds of people. And when I was in high school in Ontario, grade 13, because we had an extra year of high school, I got to go to the English teacher. I wrote an essay about understanding media, and I got to go to the coach house in 1970. And to one of his meetings. So that was pretty interesting. Anyway, so he wrote a lot of books. The Gutenberg Galaxy was about how print completely changed people. Understanding media was about understanding media. The medium is the massage, is not a misprint. It's not a typo. The Global Village, the laws of media. Some of the books that he wrote or articles. So his idea was that each technology or medium extends a person in some way. It amplifies or extends some capability. So, for example, the wheel. This is written in the medium is the massage, which is a 1967 book. The wheel's an extension of the foot, the book's an extension of the eye, clothing is an extension of the skin. So each one of these he has an elaborate discussion about. Electric circuitry is an extension of the central nervous system. So he says when you have instant communication, well, I'll show you that. So this is the media guru. So one of his key ideas, which was especially pushed by his son Eric McLuhan, was the tetrad. So the tetrad says for any technology, first thing is, what does this enhance or extend or amplify? What capability does it extend or amplify? That capability might be something very similar to something that existed before. It might be ancient, or it might be just recently before. If you push it too far, it reverses. The example I like is you have a light switch, you can't reach it. You get a 1-foot ruler and you can reach it. Okay. If I push it further, I get a meter stick ruler. I can also switch it. If I get a ruler that's 2 meters long, now I can't do it anymore. It's stopped working. That's his idea of reverses, that when you push it too far, it reverses into something opposite. It obsolesces some other capability that you did have. And when he refers to obsolete, it doesn't mean like it's gone. He means obsolete, like writing letters by hand is an art form. It's obsolete. So this is a statement from 1971. What is very little understood about the electronic age is that it angelizes man, disembodies him, turns him into software. It's a pretty accurate thing from 1971. Maybe in the interest of time, so you have a car, It lets you travel faster, gives you a private space. What happens? You get radio, podcasts, your phone, so much for private. You get traffic jams and you commute further to work. Like one of the things that happened with commuting to work is that it was a half hour when people walked, it was a half hour when they had horses, and it's still a half hour if you're lucky. So it retrieves and it obsolesces walking, and so everybody gets unhealthy. So day 3 is the no idea is good enough day. So each working group presents each of their concepts and there's a discussion about what won't work, how to make it work, why it won't work from a business perspective. Like one I remember was we were making postage meters, our cryptographic devices. They transfer funds cryptographically. So you want to keep security over the keys. So we had a whole system, key management system for managing the cryptographic keys for these meters. And we had the manufacturing people there, and they just said, no, you're not going to do that because we can't have our manufacturing process dependent on your process. So we had to come up with some ideas to improve that, and there was like 3 patents came out of that discussion. So by having the manufacturing people in the meeting, we learned that okay, that's not going to work. We have to do something better. Okay, so then you're going to begin the final invention disclosures. There's the company, the leaders of the company or of the session prioritize the concepts, to identify who the potential inventors are and what their concepts are, the inventive concepts that they contributed. And you assign an author, which should be one of the inventors. Well, it always is one of the inventors, to write the invention disclosure. And then the homework is to write finalized disclosures, write and file patent applications, and go home and celebrate. Okay. So this is, I use this as a bonus question on exams. Isidore Rabi invented or was the scientist behind nuclear magnetic resonance, which is the physics behind MRI. He was being interviewed about why he was successful, and he said it was his mother, because when the other kids came home from school, their mothers would say, "What did you do in school?" And his mother said, "Izzy, have you asked a good question today?" So that's, have you asked a good, thank you very much. And if you have any questions, that's it.
So, yeah, I've got a question for you. Suppose I said, I've got this great idea, let's invent the light bulb. I mean, does that make me the inventor? Or is it the person who actually does the work to discover that you need like a filament made out of tungsten to make it work? Who gets to be the inventor?
So that's actually a pretty interesting question. So for example, the smart card, that we all carry around now as credit cards. There was an inventor in France who came up with the idea of putting a computer on a card and using it as a, he wrote some fairly detailed description. He had an idea for a prototype. The prototype wouldn't have fit in a pocket, but he was the inventor of it. Even though he didn't know how to do it at that point in a way that was really practical, he disclosed the best way to do it. So if you just say, I invented a light bulb, then I'm sorry, that's already been invented. If you have an idea for, oh, here's this other technology I read about, and that'll make a great light bulb, you could be an inventor on that. That's possible, even if somebody else has to do the work. On the other hand, if you say, here's an idea for an invention, I have no idea how to, well, here's the way you would do it, but I'm not like the engineer who knows how to do that. And you have somebody do the work, unless that person added something creative beyond what the person who described the idea did, unless they come up with something additional, then they're not an inventor officially. Yeah. So it's a delicate subject.
Yeah, my thinking on this is that if you're in a group meeting and somebody has like some random contribution, they're basically, they have to be listed as inventors. So you could say, I've got this idea, let's just use push buttons. And someone else says, yeah, but maybe we need to encode it so that it can be in band. Let's use dual tone multiple frequency. I mean, maybe they're both inventors.
Could be. Yeah, so that is a problem with invent sessions. If you have 30 people there, and you know, sometimes you have people who like, yeah, I heard that. I thought that was a great idea, so I'm an inventor on this. But so that's like the extreme case, and that's easy to get rid of. But that's why it's important to try to record who came up with an idea. What was the inventive part of their idea, and is that part of the claim? If it's not, even if it goes into the description, but you decide it's not part of the claim, they're not an inventor.
So you had perhaps over 150 patents in your name. Of those patents, how many were created using this process that you're describing now?
Maybe a third of them.
All right, it's a lot.
And then 2/3, the other thirds were like directly during projects working on how do we do, yeah, something like that.
Gotcha.
So.
Are there any other questions? Well, I hope everybody will thank the speaker. Join me in thanking the speaker. We'll have another meeting next month. And I thank you very much for your time. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.